All right, so let's take a look at what they mean by wireless architecture. So there's different ways of looking at building a wireless network, and part of that doesn't have anything to do with where you place items. It has to do with how the transmissions are occurring. And so if we look at the characteristics that they have here, there's a couple of different methods to how you send and receive data, which is known as a signaling method. So the first is a frequency hopping spread spectrum. And so if you understand what the terms are referring to, it kind of helps. So frequency hopping refers to actually jumping different frequencies of the signal. Spread spectrum means that it can spread that across a specific spectrum of radio technology or radio frequencies. So this is what happens. You basically have several frequencies that you're using, and the communications hops the data to different signals. And so because frequency hopping spread spectrum shifts automatically between frequencies, it can avoid interference that might be on a single frequency. From my understanding, the military uses this a lot. So if they've got a remote site out there and they're using radio signals to communicate with it, then it'll use several frequencies and it will hop between those frequencies. So not only are they encrypting the signal, but you have to know where it's hopping to. So it'll have several frequencies and it just hops around. One end knows what it's hopping to, the other end knows what it's hopping to, and so they can keep up with each other. But you, as somebody that's eavesdropping, even if it wasn't encrypted, you only get a little tiny chunk of the information. This isn't used a lot. It is used in Bluetooth, but we'll get to where these are used more. Direct sequence spread spectrum. The transmitter breaks up data into pieces and spreads the pieces across multiple frequencies in a certain range. And that is much more susceptible to interference and is less secure because, as I said, you're hopping those frequencies. This is actually just spreading the data across an entire range, and it's just going through there. And then you've got orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, which is used. So when you look at these, you would really look at the first two are often competing ones. Use this or use that. But let's take a look at what OFDM does. It breaks data into very small data streams to send the information across long distances where environmental obstacles may be an issue. So if you're sending data a long ways, then all three of these are kind of competing for your attention. Which one of these methods should I use? And of course this one is better because what it really tries to do is it pushes that into very small data streams, and you're focusing that signal so you can shoot that 20 miles or 100 miles or whatever you need to do. So what does it do? Well, it modulates the adjacent radio signals orthogonally, meaning that the linear transfer preserves length and distance. This allows for a very large number of small data streams. So that's what multiplexing refers to. It refers to being able to put many data streams into one single communications channel. It's multiplexing. That term is used a lot in networking. For instance, you may have two strands of fiber that are using, that you're connected to Tucson with or something, but you want to put a lot of different communications on those two strands. And so you multiplex the information, and with fiber, they often do that with different modes of light so that they can send those modes of light down the same channel without interfering. With radio multiplexing, you're dividing up, you're breaking up the data into very small streams, and then you're modulating the data so that you can use these data streams, like 10 different data streams all down one single frequency. Reduces the effects of signal and interference caused by environmental obstacles such as walls and buildings, and we use this in GAN, 802.11 GAN, AC wireless networks to achieve greater transmission rates. This means that in your house, you can take that more than one channel and you can divide that up and send multiple streams through it so that they're not interfering with each other. What that would mean is that one device has the opportunity to speak just as another device has the opportunity to speak. A long time ago, we talked about how wireless network is really like a hub situation, because if my phone is transmitting on the same frequency as your phone and we're in the same room, then one of us has got to be quiet while the other one transmits. And so if you can divide up that frequency and say I'm just using a portion of it, that allows a greater use of that frequency. Now, another way to look at wireless is as a topology, and we really don't use ad hoc. Ad hoc is a true wireless network, and you can do this. Anybody can do this. This is one of those things that again, usually we'll do this in a lab. It doesn't take very long, but people with their own devices will come in, and instead of connecting to a network, you actually would create a network. And then you give it a little name, and everybody else sees that network. So if I was on my iPad, I could say, okay, well, let's create the James network. And then you guys would all see James on there, and you would connect to it. Now, that's not going to provide internet. My device is not providing a channel to the internet, but it is providing a wireless connection, and we could actually transfer data back and forth between one another and do stuff like that. Most people never do anything like that. So when it says it's using a physical mesh topology, what it means is that all of our devices, if we had 10 different notebooks that we were all using, each one of our notebooks would be able to communicate directly with the notebook that it wants to. And so it's a mesh, right? Because if I say, oh, I want to pull up a file off of your computer, I would double click that on your computer, and your computer and my computer would talk directly. Now, that doesn't mean that the wireless signal is just beaming over to our computers. Remember, it goes out in a donut, right? So mine would flood out everywhere, and your computer would eventually get that information, and then yours would flood out everywhere, and my computer would get the information. So it is cheap and easy to set up, but it can't handle a large number of hosts, because who's keeping track of who's on this network? You don't have a central device doing that at all, and so it becomes very problematic. The devices will try to transmit, and then two try to transmit at the same time, and then they have to stop, and it takes a long time. And requires special modifications to reach some kind of wired network. And what they mean by that is that if I had a notebook that did have a wireless connection, there is a way for me to share that internet to you, but I'm going to have to go through some hoops to make that happen. It's not just going to happen itself. So we usually don't use that. What we use is infrastructure. So we have an access point that's someplace, and we talk to that access point. And so I can still talk to your computer. I can still, find out if your computer has stuff on it and double-click files or copy something to it. But the information is actually traveling to that access point, and then from the access point to your computer. You have this access point, this AP, that's really controlling everything. So as it says, it functions like a hub on an Ethernet network, and that's because the wireless functions like a hub, not really because the access point functions that way. The wireless, right, when you transmit, bam, it takes up the airwaves. I transmit, bam, it takes up the airwaves. So that's like a hub. The network uses a physical star topology with a logical bus, and that's basically what I've been talking about. You can easily add hosts, so that's when your friend comes over and says, hey, can I get on your Wi-Fi? What's the passphrase? And then you give it to them, and now they're part of your infrastructure network. The AP can be connected to a wired network easily, which is usually what it's designed to do, right? We really don't like a system that's totally wireless. Everything goes back into cabling someplace, and the reason why it goes into cabling is because it's faster. So even cell towers, they'll bounce the signal from tower to tower until they finally get to where there's a cabled connection, and then it goes into the cable. And so the placement and configurations of the APs then require a lot of planning. Even in your own house, if you've got a bigger house, if it's a brick home, most people just go, well, this is where they brought the fiber in, or they brought the cable in, so I put it there. And it ends up way on one end of the house, meaning that on the other end of the house there's hardly any signal. But if they'd placed it in the middle, the whole house would have signal, right? So that's what they mean by placing and configuration. In order to get it right, you got to put it in a good place. All right, so then we look at media access. All right, so this was the topology of how it's laid out, and this was how it was actually signaled. And then finally, how does it actually access the media? Now, I want to stress that what does it mean by media? It means the airwaves. How are the airwaves accessed? And so this is quite a process. Wireless networks use something like Ethernet, except they use carrier sense multiple access with collision avoidance. See, on an Ethernet network, we use collision detection because it's actually faster to just detect the collision and retransmit. In a wireless network, that's not faster, so it tries to avoid the collision, which causes more overhead. There's more things it has to do to try to avoid it. So this is the process that it goes through in order to make sure this happens. So it's a lot. The sending device listens, so it's listening to the airwaves to see if anybody else is transmitting. If no one else is, then it waits a random amount of time, and then it tries to actually transmit. If no other device is transmitting, the sending device broadcasts a request to send, an RTS. And if you use wireless snooping tools, you'll see RTS on there that'll be listed, and that's what that means, is it's a request to send. So your device doesn't come online and just send the information. What it does is it comes online and says, I see that the airwaves are clear, so is it okay for me to send? So again, you have to think of the fact that this is not a directional signal, it's going everywhere. And so when you are talking to the access point, there may be somebody else out there that you can't even see, right? Maybe the access point is sitting between you and somebody else. And so that somebody else's signal is not strong enough to even get to you. So you think the airwaves are free, but they're really not. So that's what that request to send is. It sends that out, and then if it gets a clear to send, which is a CTS, from the access point, then it'll go, oh, okay, I got a clear to send. So the thing in charge is telling me it's okay to send, so I can go ahead and do that. And it breaks that up. So the access point does all the timing with this. You know, we like to think of things in seconds and minutes, but electronically they deal with milliseconds and even smaller. And so it's giving you a little chunk of time, somebody else a little chunk of time, somebody else a little chunk. And then it can balance everything, and everybody in the room is watching a YouTube video, you know, but you're not having any trouble. I mean, how is that possible? I mean, everything's happening so fast, and it's juggling this information so fast that it looks like everybody's accessing this all at once, and in reality it's not. That device is controlling who can send and what to do. Now, it has gone beyond that. So, you know, if you look at multiplexing and all that is happening, and all the different radio frequencies, these days, a lot of fancy things are happening, and so it could actually say, well, I'm going to talk to this one on this channel, I'm going to talk to you on this other channel. That's two different sets of channels, so they're not going to interfere with each other, and then it is doing two things at once. But depends on, you know, what you're talking to and the standard that you're capable of doing and it's capable of doing. They also point out that wireless is always half duplex. It's a shared two-way communication. So it's the whole, I've got a walkie-talkie and I push the button and it goes beep, telling you that I've let go of the button. Again, you can't have the access point transmitting on your frequency as you're trying to transmit to it. And the best way that I can describe this is you driving down the road and you've tuned into your radio station, and then as you go further and further away from that tower, you eventually get out of the service area of that radio station, and now there's somebody else broadcasting on that same frequency, right? 102.4, whatever that frequency is. And so as you get into that area where you start to pick up the other one, you lose yours, and then it gets staticky, and then you pick up yours, and then you lose the other, and it goes back and forth, and it's really confusing. And that can happen for miles and miles until finally it picks up the news station and doesn't pick up yours. And the reason why you're hearing static or it's jumping back and forth is because those two radio frequencies are slamming into each other. And whichever one is stronger, your FM radio is going to pick up. Whichever one's weaker, it's not going to pick up. So it goes back and forth, back and forth. That's how it works. And so if you're in a room and everybody's using the same frequency, 802.11, channel 4, then you've all got to wait. You can't just all be transmitting at once. Even the access point has to wait, because if it transmits when you transmit, it collides, and then you don't have anything good happening. So it's not full duplex like a standard wired network. It's half duplex. One way, then the other. All right, and then you have devices. And the devices are network cards, wireless network cards, wireless access points, and wireless bridges that connect two access points together. And those can be, well, talk about that later. So those are the different wireless architecture facts that are happening. I'm going to pause it here and we'll continue with the next one. I want to chop these down into small bits.